Hey, what's up guys? My name is Carrie and I would like to share my thoughts on the Nintendo 3DS eShop closing. I have been a Nintendo player since the Game Boy, with Super Mario Land being my first game. And ever since then, I have loved Nintendo, especially the handheld. And I've played everything on Nintendo up through the Switch. But the 3DS might very well be my favorite console. I was heavily into Nintendo at the time when the 3DS was out. It brought me back in from a very lost and confused place I had been in my gaming. And I just have had some of my best gaming memories on the 3DS. And part of that's tied to Street Pass and things that don't really exist or work like they used to, but there are some really great things. And now that the eShop is slated to close 2 weeks from today, on the 27th of March, 2023, a lot of people are talking about what you need to download. Do you need to download everything? It's all going to be lost. What do we do? The roof is on fire. All these things. But I think that led me to dig in really deeply on what's on the eShop. What don't I have that's on the eShop? What won't I be able to get when the eShop closes? And ultimately, are there things that I need to download? And so I'd like to share my thoughts and my findings and how I research this with you so that you can kind of do the same exercise for yourself. Because I found that the list of things that I needed to download from the eShop was shorter than I thought. I found that the list of things that I wanted to download from the eShop was a little longer than I thought. And maybe you'll find the same. I've broken my findings down into 6 categories. They are Nintendo 3DS eShop exclusives, means you can only get them on the 3DS eShop. 3DS enhanced versions, most of them visually enhanced, but these are versions of games that you can get on other consoles, including other Nintendo consoles in most cases, but the version that's on the 3DS lets you use, let's say, the 3DS slider for the 3D effect, or some other enhanced visuals or some additional gameplay. Then we've got the games that are free to download, but that free comes with a big asterisk because they require microtransactions to fully express the game. Some for cosmetic purposes, others for core gameplay require these microtransactions. So whether or not downloading those games 2 weeks before the eShop is worth it to you is a decision for you and you alone to make. The 4th category is 3DS utilities or applications. These are not necessarily games, but these are things that allow you to enjoy your 3DS more fully. A lot of them honestly are related to Pokemon, and whether or not that's categories of interest to you will likely hinge on whether or not you like Pokemon. Then I've added a category for games that are expensive on the 3DS because, yes, you can buy these games physical. However, if you're not a physical only type person and you are willing to buy a digital version of a game when you can, and especially where it's going to save you quite a bit of money, this section may be worth it for you. I considered making a longer video on that section. I'll talk more about it as we get in there. And then the final category I have is the Virtual Console. I've not included all the games on the Virtual Console, but I think it merits discussion because there's some games that are A, cheaper to play on the Virtual Console, and B, cooler to play on your 3DS than maybe any other console. So let's get started here. I'm going to start with the eShop exclusives. Now, the first 2 games I'd like to mention here are truly exclusive to the 3DS. You cannot play them on any other console. Furthermore, there is no physical release. And if you want to play them, you'll have to play them on the 3DS. They start with Harmo Knight, which is a game brought to us by Game Freak. You'll know the name if you're familiar with Pokemon. But this is not a Pokemon game, although it may graphically have some Pokemon visual elements. This is a rhythm runner, a unique take on a rhythm game, and I think it has some fun music. I think it is kind of fun to play. Is it worth $15? That's up to you. Dillon's Rolling Western 1 and 2 These are $9.99 and $10.99 respectively. Dillon's Rolling Western and Dillon's Rolling Western The Last Ranger. Both eShop exclusives, both pretty fun games. I think each game in the trilogy of Dillon's is kind of slightly different as far as what kind of mechanics it uses. The third game in that series, Dillon's Dead Heat Breakers, got a physical release, so it's not on this list. Some other eShop exclusives: Attack of the Friday Monsters, A Tokyo Tale, Weapon Shop Omasse, Crimson Shroud, The Starship Damrey, The Legend of KusaKari. This is normally a $5 game. It's currently $1.99. If you would like to put some more things on your 3DS, why not throw that one on there? And then the Denpa Men trilogy. That's the Denpa Men 2, and the Denpa Men 3. Those are all truly eShop exclusives. Those Denpa Men games are $9.99, $11.99, and $9.99 respectively. Now, before we move into our next category, I did want to mention there's a few games that are available in limited other releases, starting with 2 games that are digital only in the US. You can buy a physical version of these 2 games, but you would have to buy it PAL region, for instance. They're both $29.99, and they are Rhythm Paradise Megamix and Picross 3D Round 2. Again, to obtain these games in the United States for US version of them, I mean to say, you'll have to get these digital versions. If you don't collect in that way and don't include digital, then you could probably skip these, but otherwise something to consider. There's also 4 games that are on the Nintendo Switch, so maybe you want to play them on the Switch, but I'll just mention them quickly. They're Boxboy, Boxboy, Bye Bye Boxboy. Those are all $4.99, as well as God of Protectors. Now, there is a God of Protectors on the Nintendo Switch, but it has a different subtitle, so it may not be the exact same game. That one's $12.99. Maybe look into that one, see if it interests you, and see if that's something you'd like to download. The last 2 games on here are available on cell phone, but I do not like playing on cell phones myself. I mean, I'll do it. And I suspect that if you like cell phone gaming, you're probably not watching this video, but I could be wrong. The 2 games are Liberation Maiden, which is available on iOS for $7.99 on the 3DS eShop, as well as Pocket Card Jockey, which I am interested in. That one is on the iOS as well as Android shops, and on the 3DS eShop, it'll cost you $6.99. Now, that's my complete list of true eShop exclusives. Now, there's some other subcategories here, so don't turn us off just yet, but those are truly eShop exclusive type games. Whether or not you want to download some or any of those games is completely up to you. But as you can see, the list actually isn't that long there. Now, where it got a little longer for me was where I started looking at some of these games that are enhanced for the 3DS. And many of the games add the 3D feature, which is that little slider bar on your 3DS. You probably normally put it on the off setting if you actively play your 3DS, because for most games, it does little more than provide you with a headache. However, for some games, it does look incredible, and some of these older games actually are where it hits best. So I'll start with the 3DS classic type games. We first have Kirby's Adventure 3D Classics, that's $6.99. Then we have Kid Icarus 3D Classics, that's $5.99. We have Excite Bike 3D Classics, that one's $5.99. We also have 3D Gunstar Heroes at $5.99. 3D Sonic the Hedgehog and 3D Sonic the Hedgehog 2, each $5.99. Now, this 3D Sonic the Hedgehog 1 is included in another package I'll discuss later below, so maybe consider buying the Sega 3D Classics collection instead, but we'll get there in due time. We have 3D Outrun at $5.99. We have 3D Streets of Rage 2 at $5.99. We have 3D Shinobi 3, Return of the Ninja Master, $5.99. 3D Classics Twin B at $4.99. 3D Classics Urban Champion at $4.99. 3D Classics Xevious at $5.99. And 3D Classics Twin, well, I already said Twin B. The last one on the 3D Classics is the Sega 3D Classics Collection, which includes Power Drive, Puyo Puyo 2, Maze Walker, Fantasy Zone 2, The Tears of Opa Opa, Sonic the Hedgehog, Thunderblade, Galaxy Force 2, and Altered Beast. All of those games together on that collection for $19.99. Honestly, if you're considering getting that one Sonic the Hedgehog for $6, maybe consider picking up the Sega 3D Classics collection for $20. There's a few other games on this list that I would like to include. Two of them actually include their penultimate editions. These are available elsewhere, but here you get them either remastered or with some additional content. Those are Dementium Remastered for $15.99. That's available on the DS, but on the 3DS you've got a remastered version, so the penultimate's probably on 3DS. Then we have Nano Assault EX. Nano Assault EX, Nano Assault itself saw a release physically as well as on the eShop, but Nano Assault EX is not available elsewhere. It adds some additional gameplay features, and for $9.99, if you don't already own that game, this might be the way to buy it. The last two games I'd like to mention for 3DS Enhanced versions are two Phoenix Wright games. Those are Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Dual Destinies and Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. Both of these games are available on the DS, and normally they're $29.99, but they're 90% off at $2.99. So if you do not own these and are not set on owning the DS physical version, you like Phoenix Wright, the price can't get better. Both those games for $6 total. And that brings us to the end of our 3DS Enhanced versions of games. So from here, I'd like to move to games that are free to start. If you want to flush them out fully, you'll have to do some microtransactions. Whether it's worth doing that with the eShop closing in 2 weeks because you won't be able to conduct the microtransactions anymore moving forward is up to you. If you really do want to play any of these games and there's features or microtransactions that you'd like to conduct, I recommend you download them as soon as possible and get going. We'll start with Nintendo Badge Arcade. Please note this game does have a software update, so if you download it, you'll need to run the software update too to get it to its fullest effect. It's kind of like a daily player, claw machine, badge collecting type game. It's free to start. You can pay to get some additional pulls, I think. Rusty's Real Deal Baseball. This one's interesting because you actually conduct microtransactions in order to flush out all of the functions of the game, but unlike a normal microtransaction, the price is not set. The in-game character has an acceptable range of prices, and you make him an offer based on what you think it's worth. Sometimes he'll accept more, sometimes he wants less. So that one's interesting because the microtransactions are truly for gameplay, but it's also a haggling system. I'm interested in that one most of any of these ones on the list. I'll probably get it and maybe spend a couple bucks on it. We have Team Kirby's Clash Deluxe. We have 3 Pokemon titles, being Pokemon Picross, Pokemon Shuffle, Pokemon Rumble World. None of them groundbreaking, but if you like puzzle type games or Rumble type games, you know, this could be a good place to go for you. We've got Stretch Mo, which is actually pretty fun, and Steel Diver Sub Wars. And if you downloaded all of those games and conducted no microtransactions, you would spend $0. So it sounds like some great value. Whether or not it's worth it for the space on your 3DS is up to you. I'd like to talk about some utilities or applications that are available on the 3DS. These are not essential to use your 3DS, but depending on what games you play on your 3DS, they could make your experience much better. If you like Pokemon, there are 4 applications that I would recommend. If you really like Pokemon, you probably already at least know about the first one. It's Pokemon Bank. It is a cloud storage for your Pokemon. It allows you to move Pokemon between many generations, or at least collect them from many generations of Pokemon and move them into the most recent version. It allows you to store more Pokemon than you could in any one singular Pokemon game. So it's really cool, especially for people who want a living Pokedex or anything like that. It's $5.99 per year, one-time purchase basically, because at the end of this month it's going to go free. But to get it on your 3DS, you need to download it now, and then that would cost you $5. One of the reasons I'd recommend downloading that one now is it comes with Pokemon Transporter, which is another mechanism for moving Pokemon between previous generations of Pokemon games. That's free if you have Pokemon Bank, but in order to get this from the eShop before it's free, you'll need to download it, before the 27th, and that's going to cost you $5. We've also got the Pokédex 3D Pro. This is the most expensive on the 3DS utilities application list at $15. But as an avid Pokemon collector, I really like the idea of having a 3D Pokédex on my 3DS. It allows all kinds of information to come through, including 3D models of Pokemon, their cries, enhanced descriptions that allow you to view descriptions from multiple Pokemon games, which is pretty cool. But at $15, if you don't like Pokemon, it's probably not worth it. If you love Pokemon, maybe it is. Playing this on the 3DS or using it on the 3DS is, I think, as close to an actual Pokédex as we'll ever get. I know that they made some Hasbro ones back in the day, but I think what we're seeing from a Pokédex in the animation is a little more advanced than what that was. I think it's more akin to what the 3DS can do, and it's cool to see that brought to life. So maybe Pokédex 3D Pro, depending on your interests. We've got Dream Radar. This one's pretty cool because it allows you to catch special versions of Thundurus, Tornadus, and Landorus, which can only be obtained through Dream Radar. It's kind of like a augmented reality shooter, and a really cool application of Pokemon at $2.99. Even if you don't like Pokemon, it's a cool showcase of the 3DS's abilities. And if you do like Pokemon, then it's a good way to get some of those alternate variations of Pokemon. A free application is the Save Data Transfer tool that allows you to move data between different, I believe, memory cards. Something to consider, especially because it's free. Then we have the Smash Controller Wii U. If you own a Wii U and you own Super Smash Bros. For your Wii U, and you want to use your 3DS as a controller for your Wii U to play specifically Super Smash Bros., then you might want to download this for 99 cents. I don't really love the Wii U version of Smash, so I'm probably going to skip on that one, but at 99 cents it might be worth it just to check it out in the future, and so I'm kind of on the fence. Then we've got another augmented reality type application here with photos with Mario. If you own a complete in box 3DS or you bought one when it first came out, you remember that they came with these little pack of augmented reality cards. You could aim the rear facing cameras on your 3DS on those cards to make a 3D rendering, a pop-up of whatever character in the room that you were in. And this photos with Mario kind of lets you do a similar thing. The last one on this list, and possibly the most interesting, is not Pokemon. It is Mario Party Star Rush Party Guest. Now, here's the hypothetical. You own 4 3DSs. Your friends like to play video games, but they'll never buy them themselves. They want to play your video games. But you only have 1 copy of Mario Party Star Rush, and you have 3 friends over, and you all want to play it together. Well, if you download this free application on 3 of your 3DSs, and probably just go ahead and put it on all 4, Mario Party Star Rush Party Guest will allow you to have a full party of players for Mario Party using only 1 copy of the cartridge. But everyone will need this Party Guest downloaded on their console in order to make it work. So that's one I definitely would recommend checking out. Moving into our 5th category, expensive 3DS physicals. I am a physical collector. I do prefer to collect complete in box specifically for the 3DS and, cartridge-based games, but it's not always the reality. And sometimes I find loose versions of games that I want to have and I want to play, and I'll get it, and hopefully I'll find a complete in box version later down the road, or at least a boxed version, but if I don't, at least I've got that loose cartridge. Now, I started looking at the prices on 3DS games, and I'm sure you have too, and the prices have gone up. Once the eShop closes and there's no other way than physical to play some of these games, the prices will continue to go up, and it may become cost prohibitive to buy some of these games. It may already be cost prohibitive to buy some of these games depending on what your budget is. 3DS games originally retailed for $30 to $40 depending on the game generally. I'm going to use an assumption of $40, and what I did was I looked at games where even if you bought it loose, so loose is cheaper than complete because complete has the box and the manual or whatever it came with, but loose is just the cartridge. Even if you bought it loose, these games would be at least $80, and some of them are more than $80. before the eShop closes, you could download these games for $40 or $30 and save yourself at least half, and in some cases more than. 3DS prices are likely going to go up. I hope they don't. Maybe the craze dies when the eShop closes. But just in case, if you want to have all the games and it doesn't matter that you have them exclusively physical, here's some games you might want to consider downloading before the eShop goes down. First, we have 2 Professor Layton games. We have Professor Layton and the Osron Legacy. That's $39.99, as well as Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney at $39.99. That Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright game is extremely expensive. It's $100 just for the cart. And if you bought a complete box version, you'd be looking at closer to $200. So $40, if you want to be able to play that, that's probably your best bet if you want to spend less than $50. Dragon Quest VIII, another amazing game. Kirby's Extra Yarn, those are both $39.99. Those are games I'd recommend downloading if you don't want to spend $80 or more on a loose cartridge. Then we've got some yokai games, and some of the yokai games are really good. And so it's kind of like a Pokemon type deal. I remember it kind of being out. I had a friend that was trying to get me into it. I regret not buying them when they're cheap, because boy, have they gotten expensive. Some of the more expensive ones are Yokai Watch 2, Psychic Specters, Yokai Watch 3, as well as both the Yokai Watch Blasters game, White Dog Squad, and Red Cat Corpse, Go Team Cat. All of those are $39.99, which is expensive, but keep in mind these games are going to go for $80 or more if you bought them loose. And so before the eShop goes down, you got some time to get some savings if budget is your primary concern and physical doesn't matter to you that much. Finally, we have Style Savvy Fashion Forward. And if you'd like to be frugal in buying your copy of Style Savvy Fashion Forward, you can buy it on the eShop for $29.99. This is not a game that personally interests me, but maybe it's a game that personally interests you. And if you've been having trouble finding it in the wild or don't want to pay $80 for a loose version, $29.99 on the eShop might be your best bet for Style Savvy Fashion Forward. I do want to mention briefly the Virtual Console before we go. The Virtual Console is an amazing service by which you can emulate previous console games on your 3DS, and this service has now been brought to the Switch. It's part of the Nintendo Switch online subscription service, but on the 3DS it was kind of more of an a la carte type thing where you bought what game you wanted, and there's a ton of stuff. Some of these games I honestly think is most fun to play on the 3DS. Your 3DS has good speakers, it's got bigger screens, it's got backlight, something that the original Game Boy did not have. And honestly, I think playing Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue on your 3DS might be one of the most fun ways to play it. Is it the most nostalgic? Not necessarily. But at $9.99, you're also looking at getting a much cheaper version of each of those games by the Virtual Console than you would if you bought them in person. There's a few other Game Boy games on there I'd like to mention, and this isn't all of them, but these are some that just caught my eye. Kirby's Dream Land 2 Game Boy original, $3.99 on the eShop for the 3DS. Kirby's Donkey Kong Land, actually, on the Game Boy is $3.99. There's Game Gear games on here, which is pretty cool. It's awesome to be able to play a Game Gear game on your 3DS. The Game Gear was a portable handheld too, and that just kind of calls to me a little bit. I definitely don't want to put 6 to 8 batteries, however many it took, in my Game Gear. I want to play it on the 3DS, and that's where I'm going to play Tails Adventure. And if I didn't already have that 3D version of Sonic the Hedgehog that I mentioned earlier that's part of the 3D Sega collection, then I probably would get the Sonic the Hedgehog Game Gear edition for my 3DS. Tons of Game Boy Color games on here. Most of these going to be in that $5.99 range, except for the Pokemon main entries, which are $9.99. But we're looking at Mario Tennis, Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons. These are Capcom Zelda games. If you beat both of them, you get a code in each. You can use that code to play a penultimate version of the final boss. And you haven't beaten either game until you've done that. You heard it here first. Those are $5.99. They'll cost you $50 plus if you bought a physical today. So, I think that's a good way to play those games. Link's Awakening DX, Super Mario Brothers Deluxe, Pokemon Crystal version, the best version of Pokemon potentially ever made, Pokemon Gold version, Pokemon Silver version, We also have the Pokemon trading card game, which is $5.99, and Pokemon Puzzle Challenge at $4.99. Now, Pokemon cards, the value goes up and down, but I'll tell you that the best way to play the original Pokemon game by the original rules with some original cards is the Pokemon trading card game. At $5.99, you can't beat it. It's definitely going to cost you a lot less than a first edition Charizard Shadowless, right? So maybe consider getting that if you don't already own it physically. We also have Wario Land 3 for the Game Boy Color at $4.99, Shantae at $4.99, Harvest Moon 3 at $4.99. So those are some great titles, and honestly, you'll spend much more than the prices I just quoted if you bought them physically. I happen to have most of those physically. I won't be downloading them here, but some other games I have on my 3DS, just part of the Ambassador program and things like that. Also, I'll mention that there are some Nintendo Entertainment original Nintendo games on the system. I'd recommend picking up Mario Bros. Because you got to have that on every Nintendo console for it to be complete, as well as Mario Brothers 2 because some people like that game. Those are both $4.99. If you own a new 3DS, now that's a new 3DS, a new 3DS XL, or new 2DS, you can play Super Nintendo games through the Virtual Console on your 3DS. But you will need a console that specifically has the word new in front of 3DS because that's what Nintendo decided to name their console in order to play these games. Some games worth note, Earthbound at $9.99. You won't find an Earthbound copy for anywhere cheaper. It's virtual, but it is awesome to be able to play that on your 3DS. The remainder of the Super Nintendo games I'll mention are $7.99. We have Super Metroid, Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3, Super Mario Kart, and Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. If you bought all the games I mentioned on the Virtual Console, you'd spend $165. That's a lot of money, but it's a fraction of what you'd pay if you bought these games physically. So maybe consider downloading some of the Virtual Console games. In conclusion, there are a lot of games on the Nintendo 3DS eShop, but many of them were released physically. Many of them aren't cost prohibitively expensive. You can still buy 3DS games, even at GameStop. You can ask them to pull out the drawer, print you a list, and sometimes you'll find decent games, even in this day and age, even in 2023. But that said, there are some games that we're going to lose forever are when the eShop closes, unless they're remade. Now, are those games that interest you? Are those games that are worth the price? Maybe. But you've got to decide that for yourself based on your play style and your interests. I'd like to do some other videos discussing Nintendo topics. So if you'd like to see anything specific, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you for your support, and I'll look forward to talking with you next time. Again, I'm Carrie, and you take care, Game Boys and Game Girls.